Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, born on October 7, 1952, in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, Russia, is one of the most prominent and influential political figures of the 21st century. His political career spans over 2 decades, during which he has served as both President and Prime Minister of Russia, shaping the country's domestic and foreign policies in profound ways. Putin's political life is marked by his rise from a KGB officer to the de facto leader of Russia, his consolidation of power, and his efforts to restore Russia's global standing. This essay will explore Putin's political journey, his policies, and the impact he has had on Russia and the world. Early life and KGB career. Vladimir Putin's early life was modest. He grew up in a communal apartment in Leningrad, where he shared living space with several other families. His father, Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin, was a factory worker and a veteran of World War II, while his mother, Maria Ivanovna Putina, worked various jobs, including as a night watchman and a factory worker. Putin was the youngest of 3 sons, but his 2 older brothers died in infancy, leaving him as the only child. Putin's interest in espionage in the KGB, the Soviet Union security agency, began at a young age. He was inspired by Soviet spy films and novels, and by the time he was in high school, he had decided to pursue a career in intelligence. After graduating from Leningrad State University in 1975 with a degree in law, Putin joined the KGB. He underwent extensive training and was stationed in East Germany during the 1980s, where he worked as a foreign intelligence officer. His time in the KGB would later shape his worldview and approach to politics, emphasizing the importance of state security, control, and realpolitik. Entry into politics. Putin's transition from the KGB to politics began in the early 1990s, following the collapse of the Soviet Union. He returned to Leningrad, which was renamed St. Petersburg in 1991, and took a position as an advisor to the mayor, Anatoly Sobchak, who was one of his former law professors. Putin quickly rose through the ranks, becoming the head of the Committee for External Relations, where he was responsible for attracting foreign investment to the city. His work in St. Petersburg earned him a reputation as an efficient and capable administrator. In 1996, after Sobchak lost a mayoral election, Putin moved to Moscow, where he joined the administration of President Boris Yeltsin. He held various positions in the Kremlin, including deputy chief of the Presidential Property Management Department and head of the Federal Security Service, FSB, the successor to the KGB. Putin's rise within the Russian government was rapid, and by 1999, he had become one of Yeltsin's most trusted advisors. Rise to power. In August 1999, Boris Yeltsin appointed Putin as Prime Minister of Russia. This move came as a surprise to many, as Putin was relatively unknown on the national stage. However, Yeltsin saw in Putin a loyal and capable leader who could stabilize the country and continue the process of economic and political reform. At the time, Russia was facing numerous challenges, including economic instability, corruption, and a war in Chechnya. Putin's handling of the Second Chechen War, which began in 1999, significantly boosted his popularity. He took a hard-line approach, vowed to crush the separatist movement and restore order. His strongman image resonated with many Russians, who were weary of the chaos and uncertainty that had characterized the 1990s. In December 1999, Yeltsin unexpectedly resigned, and Putin became acting president. He won the presidential election in March 2000 with 53% of the vote, marking the beginning of his long tenure as Russia's leader. First presidency, 2000 to 2008. During his first presidency, Putin focused on consolidating power and stabilizing Russia after the tumultuous 1990s. He implemented a series of reforms aimed at strengthening the central government, curbing the influence of regional governors, and bringing key industries under state control. One of his most significant actions was the restructuring of the Russian political system, which included the creation of 7 federal districts overseen by presidential envoys. This move was designed to reduce the power of regional elites and ensure greater loyalty to the Kremlin. Putin also took steps to reassert state control over the economy, particularly in the energy sector. He targeted oligarchs who had amassed vast wealth and political influence during the 1990s, often through questionable means. Figures such as Boris Berezovsky and Mikhail Khodorkovsky were either forced into exile or imprisoned and their assets were seized by the state. These actions were popular with the Russian public, who viewed the oligarchs as symbols of corruption and inequality. Under Putin's leadership, Russia experienced a period of economic growth, driven largely by high oil prices. The government used the increased revenues to pay off foreign debt, build up foreign reserves, and invest in infrastructure and social programs. However, critics argue that Putin's policies stifled political competition, undermined democratic institutions, and concentrated power in the hands of a small elite. Foreign policy and global influence. Putin's foreign policy during his first presidency was characterized by a desire to restore Russia's status as a global power. He sought to counterbalance the influence of the United States and NATO, particularly in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union. One of the key moments of his early foreign policy was the 2007 Munich Security Conference, where he delivered a speech criticizing U.S. unilateralism and expansion of NATO. This speech marked a turning point in Russia's relations with the West, signaling a more assertive and confrontational approach. Putin also worked to strengthen ties with other major powers, including China and India, as well as with countries in the Middle East and Latin America. He sought to position Russia as a key player in global energy markets, using the country's vast oil and gas reserves as a tool of geopolitical influence. At the same time, he pursued a policy of managed democracy at home, which emphasized stability and control over political pluralism and civil liberties. The Medvedev interlude, 2008 to 2012, due to constitutional term limits, Putin was unable to run for a third consecutive term in 2008. Instead, he handpicked Dmitry Medvedev, a close ally and former chief of staff, as a successor. Medvedev won the presidential election in 2008, and Putin became prime minister, a position that allowed him to remain a central figure in Russian politics. During Medvedev's presidency, Russia experienced a period of relative liberalization, particularly in the economic sphere. Medvedev emphasized modernization and innovation, and he sought to improve relations with the West. However, Putin's influence remained strong, and many observers viewed Medvedev as a placeholder rather than an independent leader. In 2011, Putin announced that he would run for president again in 2012, effectively signaling the end of Medvedev's presidency. Second presidency, 2012 present. Putin's return to the presidency in 2012 marked the beginning of a new phase in his political career. His third term was characterized by a more authoritarian style of governance, as well as a more confrontational approach to foreign policy. Domestically, Putin cracked down on political opposition, civil society, and independent media. The government passed laws restricting protests, NGOs, and online speech, and several high-profile opposition figures, including Alexei Navalny, were arrested or imprisoned. In 2014, Putin's foreign policy took a dramatic turn with the annexation of Crimea, a region of Ukraine with a majority Russian-speaking population. The move was widely condemned by the international community, leading to sanctions and a sharp deterioration in Russia's relations with the West. Putin justified the annexation as a necessary step to protect ethnic Russians and Russian speakers in Ukraine, but many saw it as a violation of international law and a challenge to the post-Cold War order. The annexation of Crimea was followed by Russia's involvement in the conflict in eastern Ukraine, where pro-Russian separatists fought against the Ukrainian government. The conflict, which continues to this day, has resulted in thousands of deaths and has further strained Russia's relations with the West. Putin's actions in Ukraine have been seen as part of a broader strategy to reassert Russian influence in its near abroad and prevent further NATO expansion. In 2018, Putin was re-elected for a fourth term as president, winning over 76% of the vote. The election was criticized by international observers for lacking genuine competition and for widespread irregularities. Despite these criticisms, Putin remains popular among many Russians, who see him as a strong leader who has restored stability and national pride. Domestic policies and challenges. Throughout his time in power, Putin has faced numerous domestic challenges, including economic stagnation, corruption, and social inequality. The Russian economy, heavily dependent on oil and gas exports, has been vulnerable to fluctuations in global energy prices. The sanctions imposed by the West in response to Russia's actions in Ukraine have further exacerbated economic difficulties, leading to a decline in living standards for many Russians. Putin has also faced growing discontent among the younger generation, who are increasingly frustrated with the lack of political freedom and economic opportunities. The government's response to protests and dissent has often been heavy-handed, with police using force to disperse demonstrations and activists facing harassment and imprisonment. Despite these challenges, Putin has maintained a firm grip on power, thanks in part to control over the media, the security services, and the political system. He has cultivated an image as a strong and decisive leader, and his supporters credit him with restoring Russia's status as a global power. Foreign policy and geopolitical ambitions. Putin's foreign policy has been marked by a desire to challenge U.S. dominance and to reassert Russia's influence on the global stage. In addition to the annexation of Crimea and the conflict in Ukraine, Putin has pursued an assertive foreign policy in other regions, including the Middle East and Africa. In Syria, Russia's military intervention in 2015 played a decisive role in turning the tide of the civil war in favor of President Bashar al-Assad. Putin's support for Assad has allowed Russia to establish a permanent military presence in the region and to position itself as a key player in Middle Eastern politics. Russia has also sought to expand its influence in Africa, signing military and economic agreements with several countries and providing support to authoritarian regimes. Putin's foreign policy has often been characterized by a willingness to use military force and covert operations to achieve his goals. This approach has led to tensions with the West, particularly with the United States and NATO. The poisoning of former Russian spy Sergei Skripal in the UK in 2018, which was widely attributed to Russian intelligence, further strained relations and led to a new round of sanctions. Legacy and future. As Putin's political career continues, questions remain about his legacy and the future of Russia. Supporters view him as a strong leader who has restored stability and national pride, while critics see him as an authoritarian figure who has undermined democracy and human rights. Putin's policies have had a profound impact on Russia and the world, shaping the geopolitical landscape in ways that will be felt for decades to come. Looking ahead, Putin's future in Russian politics remains uncertain. In 2020, he proposed constitutional changes that would allow him to remain in power until 2036, potentially extending his rule for another decade. However, as he ages, questions about succession and the stability of the Russian political system are likely to become more pressing. In conclusion, Vladimir Putin's political life is a testament to his ability to navigate the complexities of Russian politics and to maintain his grip on power in the face of numerous challenges. Whether viewed as a stabilizing force or an authoritarian leader, there is no denying that Putin has left an indelible mark on Russia and the world. His legacy will continue to be debated for years to come, as will the future of the country he has led for so long.